Hey guys, it's Lumen, and welcome to my 10-minute review on Jujutsu Kaisen. Though I could ramble on for hours about any machine, I figured that it would be easier for players to watch a bite-sized review that covers everything I think is important in 10 minutes or more. With that said, I don't have much time, so let's get right into it. First up, we have the biggest stud of the machine, Gojo Satoru. In his base form, Red Gojo boasts the fastest red box generation active, which is pretty insane for farming. The unlock is also convenient in certain situations, but it sucks for ranking due to the unwanted animation. As for its leader skill, Red Gojo is a rare swipe lead that provides 3 extra combos off a red row match. Unfortunately, he doesn't fully activate his attack multiplier from the row match, as part of his attack multiplier is dependent on matching 9 or more combos. In terms of endgame, Red Gojo is a powerful damage stick with a short cooldown to inherit over. In particular, his piercing power makes him an excellent sub-option for Rosalind. As strong as Red Gojo is, Dark Gojo is what players are drooling over. His full board pattern generation active is absolutely ridiculous for everything. Dark Gojo heralds a new era of farming in Training Arena 3 with that ridiculous board swipe and his massive personal damage. And it's not like he's a one-trick pony. Dark Gojo is also invaluable for farming other dungeons as well. As for endgame, Gojo absolutely blasts enemies apart with his absurd firepower. The only knock on him is his relatively inconsistent leader skill activation clause, but in the future, Noctalia should remedy this concern. Did you think the equip would be bad to balance out how overpowered the other two forms are? Think again. Even Gojo's blindfold is busted with 4 effective skill boosts, tape resist, some blind resist, and most importantly, a full damage reduction shield, which has become popular in taking down Dark Albert in MD1. Next up, we have Yuji Itadori. Transform Yuji includes an activation restriction in his transform active, and that his team needs to have sub 20% HP before it can actually transform. After transforming Yuji becomes an absolute monster of a damage stick with an insane orb generation active that clears multiple debuffs. Transform Yuji is also quite the formidable lead with reasonable survivability and a rare 4 extra combo effect. Meanwhile, Evil Yuji packs an unrivaled blast with a staggering burst effect of 25x attack and a box to swipe and activate VDP. Bruh. Obviously, this is absolutely broken as it allows an entire team to hit insanely hard for one turn, which is useful for taking out tanky enemies like Manoa. While it definitely has its merits for swipe farming, Evil Yuji's active is also valuable for niche applications such as speed farming Ultra 1 for rank experience. As a lead, Evil Yuji reminds me of base Koyomi Araragi, as both boast a rare and convenient combination of both autoflow and an extra combo effect off of easy activation clauses. Unfortunately, Yuji's equip feels a bit lackluster compared to his other forms, as the Devil Killer feels quite niche and the inherited active looks too overtuned for Transform Yuji alone. However, if you're really into dumb stuff, you might realize that equipping this on a card with a 1-turn cooldown will allow you to infinitely loop the time and recovery buff. Please don't do this. Alright, now that we've covered the 8-star cards, let's move on to the 7-star middle rarity. First up is Megumi Fushiguro, who I find quite underwhelming overall. The base form is just a damage stick featuring the new 3-color match awakening and a boring leader skill with the novel type scaling multipliers, while the ultimate evolution form is a potential skill boost stick with a conditional fusion active and an inconsistent leader skill not in terms of survivability but of damage. To me, the best part of Fushiguro is his equip, which carries tons of extra health via Team HP awakenings as well as a 2-turn Fujin and Color Void active. This is amazing for Shura 3 but falls off in MD1 as that dungeon ideally requires a 3-turn Fujin. Next up, we have Nobara Kugisaki, who debuts the new mechanic of Nail Orbs. While I do think Kugisaki is pretty cool, I'm not necessarily sure how impactful she will be in the endgame. Her base form carries a rare set of 2 Heart Shield Awakenings, which can translate into a shield providing 10% damage reduction. Of course, the 2 4-color match awakenings solidify her value as more of a rainbow card. The active, apart from the Nail Orb Skyfall, is simply a slower version of Horrors or the monocolored Draco Platers, so much of its value is heavily dependent on the Nail Orb Skyfall. Plus 15% means that on average, the board should contain 4.5 Nail Orbs every 4 turns, which can be incredibly valuable for uber thick spawns like the Alberts or the Hexazions. You can inherit over the active during the earlier parts of dungeons since the cooldown is pretty short and may not be needed if running a superior version of the active sans Nail Orb Skyfall such as Silica. Base Kugisaki's leader skill resembles an archaic 4-color match leader skill back from the old days, and thus it suffers from the same inconsistency that plagued its progenitors. In fact, it's even worse because base Kugisaki has no innate bulk from health multipliers to fall back onto, lest the shields cannot be activated. At least New Year Reach and a Valentine's Ideal boasted fat 2x HP multipliers to work with. My real interest with Kugisaki stems from her Ultimate Evolution form's usage on teams leading Nautilus. After all, the bane of Nautilus seems to be Dark Albert and his unbreachable red hat, and thus my curiosity lies in whether Kugisaki and her Nail Orb allow Nautilus to take down Dark Albert within the 7-turn timer allotted to all teams, thus bypassing the need to bring a full damage reduction shield. Other than that, it seems like Yuvo Kugisaki is a takoyaki-oriented lead who requires multiple wood combos to trigger her leader skill effects. As for the equip, it's a wood taco assist with a 2-turn delay on a pretty short cooldown. If only this was around during Naruto's heyday. Moving on, we have one of the most hyped cards of the machine, Aoi Todo. His base carries a ridiculous multiplier stat line of 1.6 HP, 22.4x attack, 1.6 recovery, and 50% damage reduction by himself. That translates to 2.56x HP in recovery, 501.76x attack, and 75% damage reduction with 2 base total. The only requirements, a typing restriction of physical and attacker, and then just match 7 combos. Sounds like the reincarnation of Mega Awoken Dark Metatron, the angel who completely dominated the meta at one point. Meanwhile, Base Todo carries the novel 1-turn color change that debuted with Bride Yuri. Of course, Base Todo changes enemies to water since he is wood, exactly like how Bride Yuri changes enemies to fire since she is water. Of course, the real value of Todo lies in his ultimate evolution form. Lead swaps have been a way to make powerful leader pairs playable, either through boosting activation consistency or increasing damage output. However, lead swap teams were difficult to build because lead swap actives only swap the card with the active. Thus, they were almost always inherited, and the resulting cooldown would be quite a hurdle to overcome. This also meant that transform cards were effectively unswappable because you would either have to swap first and recharge the transform active, or transform and then swap later. Both options took an unreasonable amount of turns and thus was almost impossible in endgame dungeons. However, with Aoi Todo, all of this becomes much easier as he swaps the forward sub on the team with the lead. This obviously has large implications for lead swaps as it opens up tons of new possibilities. Although it is sad that Yuvo Todo is not inheritable, he would be way too broken otherwise, he is still quite valuable for rank farming teams as well as rainbow teams. Todo's equip form reminds me of Yato Umbrella, but with the full cleric active as opposed to the 2-turn Fujin that made the Umbrella so popular on release. AA3 feels like an eternity ago. Next up, we have Kento Nanami. Base form features a lot of interesting parameters in the leader skill that come from his powers in the show, but ends up becoming quite a subpar card overall. The Ultimate Evolution form, however, contains a lot of mean potential via the active. Before we get there though, I do want to mention that the leader skill does remind me of Mega Awoken Dark Metatron, again, due to the 7 combo clause and the specific sub 80% HP activation requirement, which probably isn't even that difficult to utilize based on how hard everything hits in the latest dungeons. The mean potential comes from the System Mobile active, which generates orbs from jammers while setting up Jammer Skyfall. Since the cooldown is 3 turns, you could theoretically set up an infinite loop of Jammer conversion that takes advantage of the pseudo-permanent Jammer Skyfall. Equip is for Light Rose, which is always good for light swipe farming teams. Maybe not as amazing as Gung-Ho Zeus or Duelmaster Zeus, but still nice to have, especially if you won't be using the base or ultimate evolution forms. The burst might be really nice for niche situations as well. Moving on, we have Mahito. Featuring one of the longest transform cooldowns, Mahito becomes an absolute monster completely focused on blasting enemies with overwhelming damage. Lots of roads and VDPs definitely feels orb hungry, but Mahito's post-transform active generates oodles of dark orbs via a dual attribute conversion of water and wood. Lead-wise, Mahito provides both autofill and 3 extra combos just for matching a blob of dark orbs along with 12.96 HP and 400x attack. The devil typing restriction does suck a bit, but most great dark cards are devil type anyway. The bigger obstacle to overcome is Mahito's complete lack of recovery, as he does not generate heal orbs and has no recovery multiplier in his leader skill. Mahito's equip form is pretty awesome as an effective 3 skill boost that also carries unbindability and dark growth. Since dark growths are almost always valuable either for farming or for endgame, this equip is quite convenient to have. Next up, we have Jogo, another transform card with a 28 turn cooldown. Once transformed, Jogo carries the fastest in-game Void effect in his post-transform active, allowing him to maximize his damage potential as a fire taco card even in the face of Void shields. Takoyaki damage scales up to ridiculous heights with each additional same color combo, which sucks against Void shield spawns because players conventionally utilize VDP to deal with these enemies. Unfortunately, VDP takes 3 potential combos and packs it into one box to pierce said shield, which means you lose out on a ton of damage. However, Jogo removes the restriction on matching boxes with his active. My problem with Jogo right now is that he feels a bit awkward with Rosalind dominating everything to do with fire attribute. Mainly, his cooldown feels very unwieldy and his niche is currently filled by Rudra. Who knows how things may shake out in the future, but for now, Jogo just lacks a home. Jogo's equip form is decent enough as a 3-turn delay with Unbindability, a red takoyaki, and 2 Recover Bind Awakenings, which have become incredibly relevant due to spinner latent usage in MD1. Unfortunately, my gripe with this assist is the attached gravity, which undoubtedly makes it cooldown longer than it should be without providing much benefit on endgame teams, which is likely its most relevant application. Moving on, we have the orb skin Maki Zen'in. Zen'in is an interesting debuff countercard with Unlock, much like Horus in his seasonal variant, in that the burst scales off the number of certain typings present on the team. Unfortunately, the scaling multiplier is quite lackluster, so Zen'in's active is more of an anti-burst counter than a legitimate power spike option. Zen'in's leader skill is also nothing to write home about, as a generic rainbow leader skill with auto foot and tons of shield. Zen'in's equip form, however, piques my interest as a brutal Devil Destroyer. Not only does it pack 2 damage awakenings, but it also carries a ridiculous burst that scales out the number of Devil Killers present on the team, which can be used in a variety of ways. Obviously, the Devil Killing aspect means this equip is only situationally useful, but it could be invaluable for ranking or farming someday. Alright, now we got the 6-star bottom rarity. I'm not going to be covering all of them, but I do want to talk about 4 cards that caught my eye. Noritoshi Kamo, the fastest inheritable 3-turn Void effect by a mile. If you farm, you should probably get this. Momo Nishimiya, super stack card for light row swipe in all aspects. Good amount of skill boost, lots of rows, great double row generation active, and a valuable 3 extra combo effect in leader skill. This much value in such an accessible card? Miwa Kasumi, another water row swipe lead with a 3 extra combo effect. Mia has a low cooldown counterattack active which goes well with her giant health pool. Though this lead niche is saturated by high profile names such as Giyu, Kaiba, and Pixel Shizumaru, Miwa is definitely a great budget option to work with and even has unique merits of her own. Masamichi Yaga. Yaga would totally be ignored if it wasn't for the fact that he synergizes extremely well with Izuku Gain, a bottom rarity card from Monogatari that can form an orb generation system. The reason Yaga is superior to a lead like Freya is because his 4 extra combo effect is able to activate the 10 combo awakening on Izuku, allowing her to actually do damage. Maybe the damage doesn't change anything, but it definitely caught my eye. And that's my take on Jujutsu Kaisen in 10 minutes or more. See you in the next event, and as always, good luck and have fun.